The smoke cleared from the rubble of Firebase Delta 7, revealing twisted metal and scattered debris where humanity's most advanced military outpost once stood. Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire watched the destruction through his flagship's viewing screen, his four eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The human colony of New Terra Prime would fall within days, and with it, the last significant resistance in this sector. "Sir, we're detecting movement in the debris field," reported his tactical officer, mandibles clicking nervously. Kethvar dismissed the concern with a wave of his scaled hand. "Scavengers. Perhaps some wounded humans crawling from their holes. Let them suffer." What the Zephyrians didn't know was that deep beneath the firebase, in a reinforced bunker that had withstood their orbital bombardment, Sergeant Elena Vasquez was very much alive. The 24-year-old combat engineer had been labeled the good girl by her unit. Always following orders, never questioning command, the perfect soldier who kept her head down and did her job without complaint. Elena pushed aside a fallen beam and checked her equipment. Her standard-issue plasma rifle was functional, though her armor had taken significant damage. Around her lay the bodies of her squad mates, good people who had trusted their superiors to make the right tactical decisions. That trust had gotten them killed. She activated her suit's recording device and began documenting what she saw. The firebase had been deliberately undermanned, despite intelligence reports showing massive Zephyrian fleet movements in the area. Critical defensive systems had been offline for maintenance during the attack. Supply requests for additional ammunition and shield generators had been denied just days before the assault. Elena's enhanced optics captured every detail as she moved through the destruction. Bodies of soldiers who had fought to the end with makeshift weapons when their official gear failed them. Blast patterns that showed the enemy had detailed knowledge of the base's layout and weak points, evidence that painted a disturbing picture of betrayal from within. The communication array was destroyed, but Elena remembered her training. Every piece of her equipment had backup protocols, and her suit's memory core could store terabytes of data. She began methodically gathering evidence, her movements careful and precise despite the rage building inside her. As she worked, Elena intercepted scattered Zephyrian communications. Their confidence was absolute. They spoke of human military leaders who would ensure safe passage for their fleets, of colonies that would surrender without resistance, of a species too weak and divided to mount effective defense. Elena reached the firebase's command center, where Colonel Martinez lay dead at his post. She found his personal logs, encrypted files that detailed months of suspicious orders from high command, patrol routes that left critical areas undefended, intelligence reports that had been suppressed or altered, a pattern of sabotage that went straight to the top of the human military hierarchy. Her suit's sensors detected approaching Zephyrian ground forces, a cleanup crew coming to ensure no humans had survived. Elena gathered the colonel's data cores and prepared to move. She had spent 3 years being the obedient soldier, following every order without question. That version of herself had died with her squad. The good girl was gone. What emerged from the ruins of Firebase, Delta 7, was something the galaxy had never seen before. A human soldier with nothing left to lose, and evidence of betrayal that would shake the foundations of both human and alien power structures. Elena Vasquez vanished into the wilderness of New Terra Prime, carrying with her the proof that would expose the conspiracy that had doomed her world. The Zephyrians believed they had eliminated all resistance, for they had no idea they had just created their worst nightmare. Behind her, the firebase continued to burn, its smoke carrying the last prayers of the dead into a sky filled with enemy ships. Elena didn't look back. The good girl soldier was buried in that rubble, but something far more dangerous had taken her place. The war was about to change in ways no one could imagine. Elena moved through the dense forests of New Terra Prime like a ghost, her damaged armor's camouflage systems working overtime to keep her hidden from Zephyrian patrols. 3 days had passed since the destruction of Firebase Delta 7, and the enemy forces were systematically hunting down any survivors. She had been monitoring their communications, learning their patrol patterns and identifying their commanders. The Zephyrians were efficient predators, but they had never faced a human who understood both their tactics and the terrain better than they did. Elena's destination was a hidden communications relay station built into the mountains, one of several backup facilities that officially didn't exist. If she could reach it, She might be able to transmit her evidence to other human colonies before New Terra Prime fell completely. As she climbed the rocky terrain, her suit's proximity alarms detected movement ahead. A Zephyrian patrol squad had taken position near the relay station, apparently aware of its existence. Elena counted 8 aliens armed with their standard energy weapons and wearing their distinctive scaled armor. The old Elena would have waited for backup or tried to find another route. But backup was never coming, and there was no time for alternate plans. The evidence she carried was worth more than her life, and these aliens stood between her and exposing the truth. Elena began her attack at dawn, when the Zephyrians were changing their guard rotation. Her first shot took down their communications specialist before he could send an alert. The plasma bolt punched through his armor like it was made of paper, a reminder that human weapons were designed to kill efficiently. The remaining aliens scattered for cover, but Elena had spent hours studying their positions. She moved through the rocks like water, appearing where they didn't expect her and disappearing before they could return fire. Her enhanced targeting systems, combined with her intimate knowledge of their equipment, gave her advantages they couldn't comprehend. One by one, the patrol members fell. Elena used their own tactics against them, turning their coordinated movements into predictable patterns she could exploit. When the last Zephyrian tried to flee, she put a plasma bolt through his back at 300 meters. 8 professional alien soldiers, dead in under 10 minutes. Elena felt nothing as she moved through their bodies, collecting their equipment and accessing their tactical data. The good girl who used to feel sick after combat exercises was truly gone. The relay station was more heavily damaged than she had hoped, but Elena's engineering training paid off. She bypassed the destroyed primary systems and jury-rigged a connection through the emergency backup network. It would only work for a few minutes before the enemy detected the transmission. But that might be enough. Elena uploaded everything. The evidence from Firebase Delta 7, Colonel Martinez's encrypted files, recordings of the Zephyrian communications about their human collaborators, and her own testimony about what she had discovered. She sent copies to every human colony, resistance cell, and military command she could reach. As the upload completed, Elena added her own message to the data package. Her voice was calm and steady as she spoke into the recorder, nothing like the uncertain young woman who had followed orders without question just days earlier. She identified herself and explained what had happened to her unit, her words carrying the weight of absolute certainty. She named the officials whose orders had left Firebase Delta 7 vulnerable, detailed the evidence of collaboration with the enemy, and promised that this was only the beginning. Elena's message concluded with a simple declaration that would soon spread across human space like wildfire. She was no longer Sergeant Vasquez of the Colonial Marines. She was something new, something the galaxy wasn't prepared for. The transmission ended just as Zephyrian interceptor ships appeared in the sky above the relay station. Elena gathered her equipment and vanished back into the wilderness as energy beams reduced the facility to molten slag. They had destroyed the relay, but her message was already spreading across the galaxy. In command centers and resistance hideouts throughout human space, military leaders and civilians watched the footage Elena had transmitted. They saw the evidence of betrayal, the proof of collaboration, and most importantly, they saw what one human soldier could accomplish when she stopped following orders and started following her conscience. The Zephyrian Empire had spent months planning the systematic destruction of human resistance. They had never considered what would happen if that resistance stopped playing by the rules they expected. Elena Vasquez was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. The footage spread through human space faster than anyone anticipated. Within hours of Elena's transmission, resistance cells across dozens of worlds were downloading and analyzing the evidence she had risked everything to obtain. The data cores from Firebase Delta 7 contained more than just proof of betrayal. They held detailed intelligence about Zephyrian military capabilities, troop movements, and most damaging of all, the identities of human collaborators embedded throughout the colonial government. On the industrial world of Titan's Rest, Resistance leader Marcus Chen watched Elena's testimony for the 3rd time, his weathered face grim with understanding. The young soldier's calm recitation of facts was more powerful than any propaganda speech. She wasn't asking for sympathy or support. She was simply presenting the truth and letting others decide what to do with it. "Sir, We're receiving similar transmissions from 17 other cells, reported his communications officer. They're all confirming the intelligence in Vasquez's data dump. The collaboration network is even larger than we suspected. Chen nodded slowly. For months, the Resistance had been fighting a losing war, their operations compromised almost before they began. Now they knew why. The enemy wasn't just the Zephyrian fleet. It was the human officials who had sold out their own species for promises of power under alien rule. Meanwhile, on New Terra Prime, Elena had become the most hunted individual in the sector. Zephyrian forces were scouring the planet for her, while human military units, the ones still loyal to the compromised leadership, had been ordered to capture her as a dangerous terrorist spreading enemy propaganda. Elena watched from a concealed position as both human and alien forces combed the forest below her hiding spot. The irony wasn't lost on her that the people she had once served alongside were now hunting her with the same determination as their supposed enemies. Her suits, long-range sensors detected an approaching human patrol, led by someone she recognized. Captain Williams had been her commanding officer during advanced training, a decent man who believed in following the chain of command above all else. Elena felt a moment of sadness knowing she might have to kill someone she had once respected. The patrol moved carefully through the undergrowth, their equipment scanning for any sign of her presence. Elena could have eliminated them easily from her elevated position, but she chose a different approach. Using her suit's communication systems, she hacked into Williams' personal comm channel. "Captain, this is Sergeant Vasquez. I know you're looking for me." Williams froze, his hand moving instinctively to his weapon. "Elena, thank God you're alive. Command said you were killed in the firebase attack." Command lied, just like they lied about the supply shortages, the maintenance schedules, and the intelligence reports that could have saved my squad. Elena's voice carried no emotion, just cold facts. "I'm transmitting Colonel Martinez's personal files to your suit. Read them before you decide whether to keep hunting me." Elena watched through her scope as Williams accessed the data she sent. She could see the exact moment when understanding dawned on his face, when the loyal soldier realized the extent of the betrayal that had cost so many lives. "Jesus Christ," Williams whispered, his voice carrying clearly through the comm link. "Elena, this can't be real. General Morrison, Colonel Hayes, half of Sector Command. They're all traitors, all collaborators, all responsible for the deaths of everyone at Firebase Delta 7 and dozens of other installations." Elena's voice remained steady, but Williams could hear the steel beneath the calm surface. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Williams looked around at his patrol squad, good soldiers who trusted him to make the right decisions. "What do you need from us?" Elena felt something she hadn't experienced since the attack. Hope. "I need you to spread the word to every unit you trust. The footage I transmitted is just the beginning. I have locations of Zephyrian supply depots, communication frequencies for their command structure, and detailed intelligence about their invasion plans. But I can't use it alone." "Where are you?" Williams asked. "I'm everywhere they don't expect me to be. Tell your people to start hitting the targets in the data package I'm sending you. Real military targets. Not the meaningless raids command has been ordering, to waste resources and get good soldiers killed." Elena transmitted a comprehensive target list, along with tactical assessments and recommended attack strategies. Each target had been carefully chosen to maximize damage to the Zephyrian invasion while minimizing human casualties. "Elena, Command will brand us all as traitors if we do this. Command already branded our entire species as acceptable losses. The choice isn't between following orders and being a traitor. The choice is between fighting for humanity or helping aliens destroy it." Williams made his decision. "What's our first target?" Elena smiled for the first time since the firebase attack. The good girl soldier was buried, but something better was taking her place. A leader who understood that sometimes the most patriotic thing a soldier could do was refuse to follow orders from traitors. "There's a Zephyrian command post, disguised as a mining operation, 30 kilometers north of your position. They've been coordinating attacks on civilian settlements. Time to shut them down." The Resistance was about to discover what human soldiers could accomplish when they stopped fighting with one hand tied behind their backs by corrupt leadership. The attack on the Zephyrian command post was executed with precision that surprised even Elena. Captain Williams and his squad followed her tactical plan exactly, using human engineering expertise and intimate knowledge of local terrain to turn what should have been a suicide mission into a devastating success. Elena coordinated the assault from her hidden position, providing real-time intelligence and target prioritization through encrypted channels. She watched through her scope as Williams's team systematically dismantled the alien command structure, capturing critical intelligence and eliminating key personnel before vanishing back into the forest. The success sent shockwaves through both human and Zephyrian command structures. For months, resistance attacks had been predictable and easily countered. Suddenly, human forces were striking with deadly accuracy at targets the aliens thought were perfectly concealed. Admiral Kethvar stared at the casualty reports with growing unease. 3 command posts destroyed in 2 days, his communication networks compromised, and supply lines under constant harassment from forces that seemed to know exactly where to strike for maximum effect. "This is impossible," he snarled at his intelligence officer. "Human resistance cells don't have this level of coordination or tactical knowledge." "Sir, we believe the attacks are being coordinated by the survivor from Firebase Delta 7, the human female designated as Sergeant Elena Vasquez." Kethvar's 4 eyes narrowed dangerously. "One human soldier is causing this much damage? She appears to have extensive knowledge of our operational procedures and has been sharing intelligence with other resistance cells. Our human collaborators are reporting that their own forces are becoming increasingly unreliable." The Admiral's assessment was correct. Across New Terra Prime and neighboring worlds, human military units were questioning their orders and demanding explanations for the intelligence failures that had cost so many lives. Elena's evidence had sparked a crisis of faith in the Quir. Colonial leadership that was spreading faster than the Zephyrians could. Contained, Elena herself had evolved from a fugitive survivor into something far more dangerous, a strategic coordinator who understood both human and alien military doctrine better than most generals. Her engineering background allowed her to identify weaknesses in Zephyrian equipment and fortifications that career military officers had missed. She established secure communication networks using salvaged equipment and guerrilla engineering techniques, connecting resistance cells across multiple star systems. Each successful operation provided more intelligence and resources, creating a feedback loop that made the next attack even more effective. The transformation wasn't just tactical, it was psychological. Elena had stopped thinking like a soldier following orders and started thinking like a commander, responsible for winning an impossible war. Every decision was calculated for maximum strategic impact, every resource allocated where it would do the most good. Her latest intelligence coup came from intercepted communications revealing a major Zephyrian supply convoy heading for their main base. The convoy carried advanced weapon systems intended to equip the final assault on New Terra. Prime's remaining population centers, Elena, analyzed the convoy's route and identified a perfect ambush point, a narrow canyon where the aliens would be trapped between sheer rock walls with limited escape routes. The operation would require coordination between 7 different resistance cells and precise timing to prevent the aliens from calling for reinforcement. She transmitted detailed operational plans to cell leaders across the region, including Williams, who had become her most trusted field commander. The message was characteristically direct and professional, with none of the emotional appeals or patriotic rhetoric that had marked earlier resistance communications. Elena's planning was meticulous. She had accounted for Zephyrian response times, backup protocols, and even weather conditions that might affect the operation. The resistance fighters who received her plans found themselves with more comprehensive intelligence than they had ever possessed during official military operations. The ambush succeeded beyond expectations. 7 resistance cells struck simultaneously at predetermined positions, turning the convoy's strength against itself. Trapped vehicles became obstacles for their escorts, while human fighters used captured Zephyrian weapons to devastating effect. When the smoke cleared, the aliens had lost an entire supply convoy along with the security forces protecting it. More importantly, the humans had captured enough advanced weaponry to equip a small army, plus intelligence data that revealed the location of the Zephyrians' primary staging area. Elena watched the aftermath through satellite feeds, noting the efficiency with which her people secured the battlefield and evacuated with their prizes. These weren't the same demoralized resistance fighters who had been losing the war just weeks earlier. They moved with purpose and confidence, knowing that their actions were part of a larger strategy that was actually working. But the victory came with a cost. Zephyrian forces were adapting to her tactics, and their human collaborators were becoming desperate to prove their loyalty to their alien masters. Elena knew the next phase of the war would be more dangerous than anything that had come before. The Zephyrians were about to discover that the human they thought they had killed at Firebase Delta 7 had become something they were utterly unprepared to face. A strategic genius with nothing left to lose and an entire species' survival depending on her success. The captured intelligence from the convoy ambush revealed something that changed everything. The Zephyrians weren't just planning to conquer human space. They intended to completely exterminate the human species. The documents Elena recovered contained detailed plans for systematic genocide, with human collaborators scheduled for elimination once their usefulness ended. Elena transmitted this discovery to every human settlement she could reach, watching as the revelation shattered the last illusions about alien intentions. The collaborators who had believed they were securing favorable treatment for humanity learned they were simply tools to be discarded after the real work was done. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Human military units across the sector began defecting en masse, bringing their equipment and intelligence with them. General Morrison, one of the highest-ranking collaborators, was found dead in his quarters on Kepler Station, apparently killed by his own security detail. After they learned the truth about the extermination plans, Elena had become more than a resistance coordinator. She was the catalyst for a complete restructuring of human military thinking. Her tactical innovations were being studied and copied by every cell leader who had access to her transmissions. Admiral Kethvar was rapidly losing control of the situation. His human allies were being murdered by their own subordinates. His supply lines were under constant attack, and worst of all, the surviving humans were fighting with a ferocity and intelligence that defied all his species' assumptions about their capabilities. She's turned them into something we don't understand, he admitted to his war council, the words bitter in his mouth. They're fighting like us. The comparison was apt. Elena's tactics incorporated the best aspects of both human adaptability and Zephyrian strategic doctrine, creating a hybrid approach that caught the aliens completely off guard. She had studied their military philosophy through captured documents and intercepted communications, then used that knowledge against them with devastating effectiveness. Her next operation targeted the Zephyrian fleet's main refueling depot, a massive orbital facility that supplied their entire invasion force. The station was heavily defended and considered impregnable, but Elena had identified a critical weakness in its design. The station's artificial gravity generators created a specific electromagnetic signature that could be disrupted by a precisely calibrated pulse from modified mining equipment. Elena had discovered this vulnerability while analyzing technical specifications captured from the supply convoy. The operation required unprecedented coordination between ground-based resistance cells and the few remaining loyal Starship crews. Elena personally infiltrated the station's communication array, using her engineering skills to plant devices that would disable their defenses at the critical moment. Captain Williams led the ground assault team while Elena worked to sabotage the station's internal systems. Her movements through the alien facility were fluid and purposeful. Years of military training combined with desperate necessity creating a perfect infiltrator. The Zephyrians on the station had never seen a human move like Elena did. She was faster, more aggressive, and infinitely more dangerous than their intelligence assessments suggested possible. Security teams sent to stop her simply disappeared. Their equipment later found modified and repurposed for her mission. When Elena triggered the gravity disruption, the entire station shook apart in a matter of minutes. The electromagnetic pulse cascaded through the facility's power grid, causing secondary explosions that turned the refueling depot into an expanding cloud of debris. Elena barely escaped in a stolen Zephyrian shuttle, piloting the alien craft with skill that impressed even her human allies. The destruction of the refueling depot stranded dozens of Zephyrian warships without the fuel needed to continue their operations, effectively cutting their invasion fleet in half. But the victory came with personal cost. Elena had been forced to make decisions during the mission that the old version of herself never could have contemplated. She had killed sentient beings without hesitation, manipulated allies who trusted her, and sacrificed resources that could have saved civilian lives in favor of strategic objectives. The good girl soldier was truly dead, replaced by something harder and more ruthless. Elena understood now why military commanders made the decisions they did, why wars required people willing to bear the weight of necessary cruelties. As she transmitted the mission results to resistance cells throughout human space, Elena realized she had become everything she had once criticized about the military leadership, except she was fighting for human survival rather than alien conquest. The Zephyrian invasion was collapsing, but Elena knew the final phase would be the most dangerous. Desperate enemies made unpredictable choices, and Admiral Cathvar still commanded enough firepower to destroy entire worlds if he chose to go down fighting. Elena was already planning for that possibility, developing contingencies that would protect as many human lives as possible while ensuring the Zephyrian threat was eliminated permanently. The war was far from over, but for the first time since Firebase Delta 7, humanity had hope, and that hope had a name that was being whispered in resistance hideouts across the galaxy: Elena Vasquez, the soldier they had tried to bury who had risen from the grave to become humanity's salvation. Admiral Cathvar made his final gamble in desperation. With his invasion fleet crippled and human resistance growing stronger daily, he activated the Zephyrian Empire's ultimate weapon, a planetary bombardment system designed to render entire worlds uninhabitable. If he couldn't conquer humanity, he would destroy them completely. The weapon required precise positioning of his remaining capital ships and a charging sequence that would take 6 hours to complete. Intelligence about the bombardment preparations reached Elena through her network of informants and captured communications, giving her a narrow window to prevent the annihilation of billions of human lives. Elena analyzed the tactical situation with cold calculation. The Zephyrian fleet was positioned in high orbit above New Terra Prime, using the planet's gravity well to stabilize their bombardment array. Conventional attacks would be suicide. The aliens still possessed overwhelming firepower despite their recent losses, but Elena had learned to think beyond conventional tactics. Her solution was audacious and terrifying in its simplicity. She would hijack the bombardment system and turn it against the Zephyrian fleet itself. The plan required her to personally infiltrate Admiral Cathvar's flagship, penetrate the most heavily defended vessel in the enemy fleet, and reprogram a weapons system that even human scientists barely understood. The odds of success were so low that most military planners would have dismissed the idea as impossible. Elena assembled a strike team from the most skilled operatives in her network, including Captain Williams and several other former military personnel who had proven themselves in previous operations. She briefed them with characteristic directness, explaining exactly what they were attempting and the consequences of failure. "We're going to steal a Zephyrian battlecruiser from the middle of their fleet, fight our way to the flagship's command center, and convince their ultimate weapon to blow up their own ships instead of our planet," Elena summarized. "Anyone who wants to find a different assignment can leave now." Nobody left. The soldiers who had followed Elena this far understood that she didn't make impossible plans. She made plans that only seemed impossible to people who weren't desperate enough to attempt them. Elena had studied Zephyrian ship design through captured technical manuals and her own observations during previous infiltrations. She knew their vessels relied heavily on automated systems that could be hacked by someone with sufficient technical knowledge and access to their command networks. The infiltration began with a precision strike on a Zephyrian patrol vessel, executed so quickly that the ship's crew had no opportunity to send a distress signal. Elena's team took the vessel intact and used its identification codes to approach the main fleet without raising alarms. Elena piloted the captured ship with growing confidence, her understanding of alien technology allowing her to blend seamlessly into the enemy formation. The Zephyrians were focused on their bombardment preparations and paid little attention to what appeared to be a routine patrol return. The team transferred to Admiral Cathvar's flagship during a scheduled supply run, using forged documentation and stolen uniforms to pass themselves off as maintenance personnel. Elena's knowledge of Zephyrian procedures gained from months of studying intercepted communications, made the deception possible. Once aboard the flagship, Elena moved through the corridors like she belonged there. Her modified armor's stealth systems kept her invisible to security scanners, while her intimate knowledge of the ship's layout allowed her to avoid patrols and surveillance points. Captain Williams and his soldiers took positions to secure their escape route while Elena made her way to the ship's central computer core. The facility was guarded by automated defense systems that would have stopped any conventional infiltration attempt. But Elena had spent weeks developing countermeasures specifically for this moment. She interfaced directly with the Zephyrian computer systems, her modified equipment translating alien programming languages in real time. The bombardment weapons control protocols were incredibly complex. But Elena had the advantage of understanding both human engineering principles and Zephyrian design philosophy. Working with desperate efficiency, Elena began reprogramming the weapon's targeting system. Instead of focusing its destructive power on New Terra Prime's surface, the bombardment array would redirect its energy toward the Zephyrian fleet's own vessels. Admiral Kethvar was reviewing bombardment preparations when his tactical officer reported unusual readings from the weapon array. "Sir, the targeting system appears to be recalibrating itself." "Impossible. The system is hardwired to prevent unauthorized modifications." Elena's voice cut through the bridge communications system with perfect clarity. "Nothing is impossible, Admiral. You just need the right motivation and sufficient technical expertise." Kethavar's four eyes widened in shock as he realized who was speaking. "The human from Firebase Delta 7. But you're supposed to be dead. You tried to bury me with my squad, but I'm still here. And now I'm going to finish what you started." Elena's voice carried no anger or hatred, just the calm certainty of someone who had already won. The bombardment weapon activated on Elena's command, but instead of destroying human civilization, it tore through the Zephyrian fleet like a scythe. Ship after ship exploded under the precise application of their own ultimate weapon, turned against them by the soldier they had tried to kill. The Zephyrian fleet died in minutes, consumed by their own ultimate weapon, turned against them with precision that their military doctrine had never anticipated. Admiral Kethvar watched his carefully planned invasion dissolve into expanding clouds of debris, the bombardment array systematically destroying every vessel in his formation except his own flagship. Elena had saved his ship for last, wanting the Admiral to witness the complete destruction of everything he had worked to achieve. When the weapon finally turned toward Kethvar's vessel, Elena was already gone, having extracted her team through the same maintenance corridors they had used to infiltrate the ship. The flagship's destruction marked the end of the Zephyrian invasion, but Elena knew the war was far from over. News of the fleet's annihilation would spread through the alien empire, and they would send more ships, larger armies, deadlier weapons. The victory at New Terra Prime had bought humanity time, nothing more. But that time was enough for Elena to complete her transformation from soldier to strategic architect. The resistance network she had built became the foundation for a new kind of human military organization, one that combined conventional forces with guerrilla tactics and infiltration specialists trained in her methods. Elena established training centers on worlds throughout human space, teaching other soldiers the techniques she had developed during her war against the Zephyrians. Her curriculum included advanced engineering, xenobiology, psychological warfare, and most importantly, independent tactical thinking. The students who graduated from Elena's programs were unlike any soldiers humanity had produced before. They thought strategically rather than just following orders, adapted quickly to changing circumstances, and understood that winning a war sometimes required making decisions that looked like betrayal to people who couldn't see the bigger picture. Captain Williams, now promoted to major, oversaw the expansion of Elena's training programs. He had learned to trust her judgment completely, even when her plans seemed impossibly risky or morally questionable. "The Zephyrians will be back," Elena told him during a strategy meeting at their hidden command center. "They'll come with better intelligence, improved tactics, and probably allies from other species who want to see humanity eliminated." Williams nodded grimly. "What do you recommend?" Elena activated a holographic display showing human-controlled space and the surrounding alien territories. "We stop waiting for them to attack us and start taking the fight to them. Preemptive strikes against their shipyards, sabotage of their supply lines, assassination of their military leadership, make them too busy defending themselves to plan another invasion. The strategy was controversial among human political leaders who still believed in diplomatic solutions and defensive warfare. Elena didn't care about their objections. She had seen what happened when humanity fought by rules that their enemies ignored. Within a year, Elena's operatives were conducting operations deep in Zephyrian territory, using techniques that the aliens had never encountered before. Human soldiers who had once been considered inferior fighters were now feared throughout the Empire as unpredictable and deadly opponents. Elena herself had become something of a legend, her name spoken with respect by human resistance fighters and terror by alien military commanders. She had evolved from a good girl soldier who followed orders into a strategic genius, who created her own orders based on what needed to be done. The transformation wasn't without cost. Elena had sacrificed personal relationships, moral certainties, and peaceful sleep to become the weapon humanity needed to survive. She rarely smiled anymore, spoke only when necessary, and made decisions that other people found disturbing in their calculated ruthlessness. But when Elena stood on the observation deck of her mobile command ship, watching human colonies that were thriving because of the security her operations provided, she felt something approaching satisfaction. The good girl soldier had died at Firebase Delta 7, but her death had saved billions of lives. The final report from Elena's intelligence network confirmed what she had suspected for months. The Zephyrian Empire was fragmenting under the pressure of her campaign. Internal conflicts over their failed human invasion had destabilized their government, while constant attacks on their territory had weakened their military beyond repair. Elena's war was ending, but she knew there would always be another threat, another enemy that saw humanity as a target rather than an ally. She had built an organization that could meet those challenges. Soldiers who understood that sometimes the most patriotic thing they could do was refuse to be good. The footage that had started everything, Elena's transmission from the ruins of Firebase Delta 7, was now required viewing at military academies throughout human space. New recruits studied her tactics, learned from her innovations, and, most importantly, absorbed her fundamental lesson about the difference between following orders and serving humanity. Elena Vasquez had been buried once, beneath the rubble of a betrayed firebase on a forgotten world. What had emerged from that grave was exactly what humanity needed: a soldier who understood that winning wars required people willing to make the hard choices that good soldiers couldn't make. The galaxy would remember her name, and more importantly, it would remember what humans could accomplish when they stopped playing by other species' rules and started making their own.